Hey everybody. So it's been a minute since I've done one of these, so bear with me maybe as we go through this, but I wanted to make sure I communicated some things to you guys here at the end of the week, especially leading up to testing starting next week. So I have several things I want to go over. I'll try and be conscientious of our time and make sure that I don't take too long, hopefully, for this screencast today. But if you'll make sure you listen and pay attention to this one, that would be awfully helpful because I'm going to be talking about a lot of things involving your EOC prep work that you're going to be working on starting today and leading into next week and then the week following when you finally take your EOC on April 27th, that Wednesday. All right. So starting here on Canvas, I just wanted to kind of show you some of the things that I put up this afternoon and evening. The extra credit has been updated for the Chapter 14 test that we just took. And if you want to click on that link, you'll see it's a PDF, but it's not a PDF that's actually like clickable. I had to go in and handwrite the date on that because no doc file apparently existed. So there are some little links with examples of songs that have been made, not necessarily by my students, but by other people out there that are fairly well done. So if you want to see kind of examples of what that might look like, kind of within our requirements, not that yours has to be anything to that level, but they're there if you want to access those. Okay, so that's on the Chapter 14 extra credit assignment link right there. As a reminder, any of those songs that are completed are due on Friday, April 29th. So that's 2 weeks from tomorrow. Okay. So if you're interested in doing that, all the requirements are listed there. Just reach out to me if you have any questions. Okay. The other couple of things you should be getting today in class from whomever the sub is, several different packets and things to look at. One of which is this EOC exam study guide. Another is this EOC study log, which I've included digital copies of both of those here for you. And those look like this. So this is the study log itself, and I'll talk you through this here in a second, but it's going to be that like yellow or goldenish kind of paper that you get. The study guide looks like this, and it's stapled actually on the right-hand side. All right. And I'll talk you through that here in a second. The other things that the sub should be giving you, you should be getting, let's see, this document right here, which starts at the top and it says Chapter 17, Lesson 1, Voyage of Discovery. This ties into all of that stuff that we did not have time to do this year. All of our unit that involved biological change, or what we often just call evolution, that is what you find in here. So I'm going to talk about the study log and I'll tell you why this becomes relevant. It's not something that you have to do though. So if you don't want to work through this, that's entirely up to you. But if you want to make sure that you're kind of prepping as best you can, then it may be worth your time to, as you're reviewing, maybe focus on some of this new information that we did not have an opportunity to discuss together in class this year. Okay. And then the other item you should be getting is this today, which is a gigantic packet. It's a practice test for the EOC, and this is actually the only practice test that the state has given us. So if you want to access that, you're welcome to. I have an answer key, but this may also come in handy as you're prepping for things. Again, none of it is required for you to complete except for this lovely little guide. Okay, so let me talk about this one first, and then I'll go back to some of those other items. Let's see. Okay, so here is the study log, and that was the first thing that I mentioned we need to talk about. So we are looking at the same document, but I've got it not on the yellow paper, obviously, because it's on my laptop, but I'll refer to it as the one on the yellow paper. So what I'm going to ask you to do between now and EOC time, which is again on April 27th, that Wednesday, I'm going to ask you to go in and spend 4 hours of study time outside of our regular class time. And that study time can look like very different things for different people. It could be, sitting and reading over things. It could be completing practice tests like this guy. It could be working through a review packet like this. It could be reviewing your study guide. It could be going through something on Canvas. It could be reviewing, your test reflections. Lots and lots of different things would qualify as study time. The benefit to this is that if you log additional hours beyond your required 4 hours, you can also earn hall passes from that. And I know for some of us, that's something that we've been asking about as we're getting closer to ending the year. So if you log an additional hour, meaning if you study for 5 hours and not 4 hours, you can get a single additional hall pass. If you log a total of 6 hours and you study for two additional, like in addition to the 4 that's required, you can get 2 hall passes. If you go above and beyond the 6 hours, I'm not going to give you any more than the 2 hall passes that you earn. So the maximum earning potential for those is just going to be 2 yellow hall passes. But if that's something that could help your grade for quarter 4, I mean, I would obviously try and take advantage of that if I were you. The way that these work, so here you're going to put the date when you studied, the time that you studied, so like 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock or whatever it might be, what you did to study, like what material it was. You sign it, or at least you write your name here legibly so I can read it. And then either you have a parent, guardian, or teacher or someone else, if you're doing this at school, sign off that you spent time reviewing. So you can bring this to other teachers, like say that you spend some time in flex time or at lunch or before school or after school, or if you have time in another class and they're allowing you to work on something else, you're welcome to have them sign off for you. But just make sure you ask them politely if they would mind to do that for you. But you do need a signature here in order to receive credit for this. This will be worth a 50-point quiz grade also. So again, it's just like you just go in and do it and you'll get your 50 points as long as you get your 4 hours of time. So I think it's more than, reasonable, and also offers an opportunity for some of us who need those additional points to get those additional points here right towards the end of the quarter. I did put the due date here at the bottom, so hopefully that's like a constant reminder for you. If you do lose the yellow sheet, this is part of the reason why I posted it digitally on Canvas. You can always go there and print another copy or ask me for another one if I have more left. Okay, so make sure you get one of these today and thumbs up. All right. So that is the study log. The other one I wanted to talk about that's also posted on Canvas is this. This is what I'm calling the EOC study guide. And this is a document that I've spent a whole lot of time kind of creating. So what you see here are these different kind of categories that our standards fit into. DCIs are like the codes for the standards. So there's nothing in this column that you need to be familiar with. This is specifically for me. This over here, the standard gives you the text of what it is you're supposed to be able to do, given what we've been working on in class this year. And then in this first column here to the right, I've got the textbook pages that align with that specific standard all listed out. So if you're on Savas, which again, it's been a while since we've been there, but if you're on Savas, you can access any of these pages that you need if you feel like there's something that you want to go back and review. The other thing I'll mention is you have an assignment being assigned today that'll be due on Tuesday next week, which is going to be to complete the final benchmark that's posted on Mastery Connect. And what I've done with that is I've come in here and put a list of the questions on that benchmark that align specifically with each standard. So if after you complete it, you want to go back and see, okay, where are the areas that I struggled with more versus something else, this would be kind of the way to align that to what we're doing with the standards over here on the left. And then this one here, the column on the far right, is the one that relates specifically to this practice test. So all these questions have been pulled and put here in terms of where they line up. Okay. So again, if this is something you want to go in and practice and use as part of your study log time, you have access now to information as far as how to better prepare yourself for the test, given how you score on those. The other thing I want to mention here is at the top, right, we have these categories. So this is Life Sciences 1. This is like our biggest, broadest category that deals with a lot of the molecule side of things. in cells. And you can see that on your EOC, it's supposed to account for about 50% of the test items you're going to see. So this is kind of our big one. This is the one that we spent the majority of the year discussing, and at least from like September and October on through right now, this last test that we took, all of that fell into this category here, except for maybe photosynthesis and respiration. But the rest of it is all right here. So it's a large chunk of what we've done this year. And so this may be an area where you can earn like the biggest bang for your buck if you go in and actually review these items. The second category here is ecosystems, which is what we were doing in the first quarter. This may be something that for some of you, you feel like you don't remember what we did. Typically, this stuff is not difficult for most students, but it is something like these cycles of matter where we talk about the nitrogen, carbon, and phosphorus cycles. That may be something that maybe you feel like you need to go back and review. And for the ecosystem sections, it's about 25 to 30% of the EOC should be coming from these standards right here. Heredity, we see even less, up to maybe 18%, but as low as even 10%. Honestly, a lot of times they include more questions than what they're showing right here, because it feels like there are a lot of things like pedigrees and Punnett squares. And I would certainly, if I were you, expect to see some of both of those. And maybe a codon chart, right, where you have to look at a sequence. Those types of questions are pretty typical on our biology EOC. But that stuff right here should be mostly review, at least in terms of what we've done recently. This last unit, which is equivalent to how much heredity is supposed to be valued at for this EOC, like the amount of points that are coming from that, is the items that we have not talked about. And leading up to your EOC in the coming like week and a half, when you're in class with me, we will review some of these things anyway. But this is where this little packet, the chapter 17 page, comes in handy. And there are 3 chapters throughout this. What you're going to see, this is like actually the workbook pages that I use with environmental science, but it makes it simpler to understand without having to go through and read an entire chapter. They kind of narrow things down and only tell you the absolute most important information. So instead of going through Savas or something else, you can access that content here and just kind of read through it and complete what you want, or just look over it if you feel like that's sufficient. The very last one here are kind of thrown in here. These are engineering and technology standards. You'll see that the paper-based practice test that we're working with, the one that I just held up a second ago, doesn't have any of these standards on it. But in general, you'll see a couple questions on the test maybe that align with these, but again, also there may be 0. So I would not worry about spending a lot of time on this, but you will see some of these questions pop up on that Mastery Connect final benchmark. So in terms of the test, what you'll see, there's one subpart for your biology EOC. It has between 52 and 56 items, which is kind of a weird number, but they include in that number field test items. So we never really know exactly how many questions you'll get. I always estimate like 55 to be safe. Okay, but generally they'll have a handful of field test items, which essentially means these are questions that they're trying to see if they can use in future years, but your scores on those would not count for or against you if you get them right or wrong. The problem is you don't know which questions are field test items. So you kind of just have to do the whole test and assume that it's all going to count and go from there. You get a total of 75 minutes to do 55 questions. And I've mentioned in every class that this test is very heavy in terms of its reading. So we'll talk about that a lot in the coming weeks, but just to kind of give you a heads up, I mean, we're talking about a minute per question. And if you have a lot of reading or if you get stuck on something, I'm going to emphasize to you that you need to just keep on moving through. Like leave it, come back to it, but move on to something that you can answer and then go back to those more difficult or confusing ones later on. And if you don't have time, then you don't have time, but at least you will have answered the ones that you felt most confident about. Okay. So those are the items that I wanted to specifically talk about. A couple of other things that I wanted to show you, and let me see if I can pull that up. So here is the testing sheet, and I'm actually going to start with the daily schedule, not with what you just saw on that screen, but I'll come back to that. So Next week, remember on the first day that you're back, the 19th, you're going to be going to your first EOC test, which is going to be English Subpart 1. And you'll do Subpart 1 on Tuesday, you'll do Subpart 2 on Wednesday, and then on Thursday, two separate subparts, 3 and 4, each of which you can see is not super long, but is going to take up quite a bit of time that morning. So, in terms of what your schedule looks like each day, as I kind of scroll through here, what you can see is that you're going to meet with all of your classes all day long. So, you're going to report to wherever your testing location is. And so, as I show you those here in a second, you can assume you go to the same place all week long next week, except for Friday, which you're going to be coming to your normal class period first thing in the morning. So for like my first period kids, you're not going to come to my classroom at 8:20. You're going to be in your testing location at 8:20 on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. After your test, you'll roll through first and then second and third. And as usual, ninth grade's going to eat lunch as part of third period. So that is not changing. But you can see how some of those class times have been shortened. Okay. I don't know actually what's going on with this lunch schedule because it looks like it's A, B, and C lunch, but no D, which makes me think that maybe they're modifying that. And we haven't heard anything about that, but I will let you know as we learn more about that. So just be aware that that may be slightly different. But these lunches also, by the way, look like they're pretty late. So unless you're an A lunch, you're going to end up maybe in a position where you're eating a little bit later than normal. So maybe bring yourself something to eat as part of that first, second, and third period morning. Okay. So you go to every class every day, which is great. Wednesday is the shortest day for testing. And well, shortest day for testing maybe for 8th grade. This is you guys down here. But still, the schedule remains the same and you still see all of your classes. Thursday, same idea, still seeing all of your classes. As we go through the week, if you have questions about the timing of anything, just reach out and let me or someone else know. We're all going to be kind of in the same boat in that we're going to have to figure out how to manage all our time and watch the clock and all those things. So, but let us know if you have any questions. So in terms of locations, if you've not been told yet, I'll pop those up here for you. So ninth grade, I'll scroll up to. You are always assigned to tests based on the classes that you have for that content area. So for example, if you have Miss Watson first period, you're going to be testing in my room every day next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Whereas if you have Miss Townley first period, you're going to be testing in Miss Benson's room, room 208. This down here makes no difference really to you. We're just looking at numbers of students in terms of the amount of seats in these different classrooms. But what you want to do is you need to find your English teacher here. All right. And the number is corresponding to the class period in which you have them. And then look at exactly who your administrator is. That will almost always be their classroom that you're supposed to report to. Okay. So here's a group of individuals. If you need to kind of zoom in or pause, you can pause and look at that. And then it goes beyond here. There's, I don't think anything here that you need to be familiar with. These are all specific scenarios. Okay. So that's the English testing locations. The week that follows next week, when you're actually back on a Monday this time, you'll do algebra or geometry, those EOCs on Monday and Tuesday, and then my EOC on Wednesday. You'll be in one location for the math EOCs, and then you'll swap to a different location for the biology EOCs. Okay, but none of my biology students or classes will be testing with me. I'll be testing one of Mr. Wortman's classes. So you all will be going to different places, and I'll be sure to let you know about where those locations will be that week. Okay, I don't want you to worry about that at all yet for next week. So other than that, I think that's all I got, and this turned into a much longer screencast, so I apologize about that, but you know how I like to talk. I will add, I put in test grades. We're not going to do a reflection this time because I felt like you've had enough of the reflections. But I did go in and I added 2 bonus points to everyone's grades out of 45. So whatever you see in the grade book would be equivalent to having points added to it, right? So we're talking about points out of 300. If I'm adding 2 points out of 45, that's going to be more than 2 points out of 300. So whatever percentage you calculate there is actually going to be a little bit higher than you would have gotten without those bonuses. But we really kind of struggled on the essay, and we really kind of struggled on some of the short answer. And if you want, next week when I'm back, we can talk about all of that. Okay. Last thing, I think I'm going to put up a Zoom option if anybody has any questions for me while you're watching this or after you've seen this on Thursday. When you're watching this, just feel free to hop on the Zoom and we can talk through it. Okay. But that should be it. All right. So I'll be home and be here. And if you need me, though, reach out and I'll be happy to clarify whatever I said that was confusing. Okay. Otherwise, if I don't see you, have a really great Thursday and an even better weekend. And I will see you next Tuesday. Bye, y'all.